Hello, welcome, Mr. Golden.
Hi, Conrad. Morning.
Morning. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for having me, and welcome and greetings to all your listeners.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Golden. Today we basically join in the rest of the world in celebrating International Women's Day. I'm sure you'd want to start there.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. You know, we all need to fully appreciate and show due honor and regard for the women of Jamaica and the women of the world, you know, the childbearers, the nurturers, those who are often not adequately compensated for their efforts, those who face glass ceilings, those who face bias, and those who face other barriers to their progress. And, you know, we are committed to continuing the work and the struggle to make equality a reality in the society for all stakeholders, and women, of course, are a most critical part of that. So we support the initiatives of today's celebrations, and we look forward to seeing our women continue to rise and continue to flourish in the Jamaican society. And of course, they've made tremendous progress over the years, and we've had a female prime minister, we have had a female chief justice, we have numerous permanent secretaries who are women, and people in senior management, both in the public and private sectors, and so on. But there are still structural biases where a lot of women are in jobs which are less well paid than men on average, and so on, and face significant challenges because of other social realities in our society. So the work isn't finished, the struggle does continue, and we support our women in that struggle.
Indeed. As I remind our listeners that we're live up on Instagram. Of course, you can also join us on the News Talk 93 FM band. And we're all over social media as we get into this interview with the leader of the opposition and indeed president of the PNP, Mark Golden. A man that we have seen ushered into the position of leader of the PNP, basically started out in his own in his own way, but certainly we have seen where his presidency is really coming to fusion now in terms of him making some very seismic move, and we will get into those. Mr. Golden, as you mentioned, the whole business of our women, indeed, you lead a party that basically boasts a very, very strong legacy. You would have a former female president, you had a former female general secretary in Maxine Henry Wilson. You also now boast a woman chairman, the first, Angela Brownberg. So all in all, you're well decorated, sir.
Yes, I mean, we have been blessed with some very strong and resolute women over the years. And thinking back to, Iris King and others of that ilk who were, very involved in the early days of the party, coming through to, Beverly Anderson Manley, who was the first president of our women's movement. And the women's movement from the 70s when it was formed has been a critical advocate and agitator for progress in women's rights. And a lot of the important legislation on the books in Jamaica that support women's rights were initiated out of the PNP women's movement and passed by the government of the PNP in the 1970s. I'm talking about things like the Status of Children's Act, which eliminated bastardy, the equal pay for women, the maternity leave law. All of these things have been very important. And indeed, the sexual harassment law, which was passed recently, was a bill drafted and tabled in Parliament in the last PNP administration. And I was very involved in its development, along with Senator Sandra Fulton at the time, and of course, the most honorable Portia Simpson Miller, who spearheaded that. And we're glad that it has eventually been enacted, though I don't believe it's yet in effect, but it has been passed into law. And that will, of course, provide additional protection for women in the workplace and in certain institutions as well. So it's an ongoing process, but there's more to be done because a lot of the bias that women face is not so much legal, but structural in the way the society is configured and the opportunities that are available to women or not available, as the case may be. And the support that women enjoy or lack of support in areas where they are facing, vulnerabilities and other challenges. So all in all, as I've said, it is a work in progress, but we're very happy to see the progress that has been made. And we are fully committed to continuing that effort, because the world is a better place when women are able to play their rightful role as leaders.
Good. You know, and while we have other things to talk about, but it is important that we set some ground, we basically get through some issues here and the International Women's Day. Certainly, that raft of legislation that would have been promulgated and put into law by former Prime Minister and leader, President of your party, Mr. Michael Manley, such as the Bastard, the Act, and so on, which would have basically give women a lot of meat on the bone to chew on, so to speak, to basically have some legitimacy with children who would have born out of wedlock, and also the equal pay for women, maternity leave with pay, and so on. All these things, and certainly it must be noted, Mr. Golden, that first world country is still having struggles with some of these things that we would have seen enacted in Jamaica from way back in the 70s.
Yes, I mean, I think we were pioneers at the time, leading the charge, certainly in the developing world. And, many developed countries were not as advanced as we were at the time. I think that there is an opportunity to do some review of some of these laws. 50 years have passed, conditions have changed. And I think that there are areas where they could be further strengthened, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But the critical work that was done there was absolutely vital to where women have been able to reach in the society today. And as we know, Jamaica really is a world leader in certain aspects of women's achievement in terms of the demographics of the society. So we're very proud of that. And that record and that continued commitment, and it's something that the party and certainly I as leader fully endorse. Certainly.
Mr. Golden, now over the last few weeks, we saw a number of things happen. We saw the situation with our students in the Ukraine, and the jury's out in that, as to how the government handled it. Certainly, when you look at in the social media space, they have gotten a resounding failure as to how they handled it. You basically stepped in, and people I saw where HG Helps wrote an article and basically giving you kudos for scoring some massive goals. What basically propelled you to inject yourself in to fill that breach when the government had found itself wanted?
Well, it was really a situation that was increasingly dire. It was a situation where it was clear that the government had dropped the ball and that these students were really left to fend for themselves in a very dangerous situation, which was unfolding. Mm-hmm. And, I really reached out more as a sort of humanitarian gesture, because I got the number of one of the students over there, and I called him, and he... it was a network call, and we didn't get through. So I tried him on WhatsApp, and I got through. And he was able. This was Friday morning, and they were in Kharkiv, which is where they were studying, which is in eastern Ukraine,
yes,
near Russia. Mm-hmm. And that was under threat of attack, and they were trying to leave to go to western Ukraine and then on to Poland. Mm-hmm. And they were having trouble finding transportation. They made two different attempts to try and get a bus to take them. Both of those fell through. And he was explaining to me that, it's a very chaotic situation. And when an opportunity arises, you have to be able to seize it or you lose it. And it just so happened, Conrad, that when I asked him, well, how can I assist because he told me that there was a train and that there was the fare was $50 US and it was 24 of them, mm-hmm. $50 US each. And I said, well, how could I assist how could I get funds to you? And he said, well, he has a bank account here in Jamaica. And I said, which bank? And he told me, and it so happened that I was also with the same bank. Mm-hmm. So, and I happened to have that money available. So I just said, well, I just transferred it into his account. And he was able to draw on it immediately through his debit card with, the way the international financial system is nowadays, that is possible. And so they were able to get their train tickets and they were able to leave Kharkiv, thank God, because that city has been really badly affected by the war. And they were able to go right across Ukraine to Lviv, which is in the west near the Polish border, and then on to Poland. But they have faced tremendous stress and tremendous hardship in that journey. I mean, I'm sure that will be documented in some way in the future, because it really was extraordinary. I mean, when they got on a bus from Lviv to the Polish border, my understanding is that they were stopped by other Ukrainians who were upset with the fact that the driver of the bus was trying to overtake traffic on the way to the Polish border, and they had to disembark and walk, and they had to walk here 38 kilometers. That's like 17 miles in icy conditions, into the night, and they reached the Polish border in the night after a 10-hour walk.
Good.
And then they had to line up for a couple more hours. Well, I'm not even sure how many more hours before they were eventually processed and could enter Poland. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by that time had made arrangements for them to be met there and looked after in Poland. And eventually many of them have returned. Some of them are still in Poland. So that whole situation was very, very challenging for them. And now they're facing tremendous uncertainty as to their educational future. I have written to the University of the West Indies on their behalf. I know the government has also been in dialogue with the University of the West Indies to see what can be done to enable them to continue. And there are different possibilities, but I don't think anything has yet been firmed up. But, I hope that the government will really pull out all the stops to enable them to continue their education with as minimal disruption as possible, because it's an extraordinary situation that they face. This is not a situation of their making or of their choosing. This is a situation in which, these are students who had the I would say the bravery and courage to go to a faraway place like Ukraine to study. A lot of them are from low-income families, because the fees in Ukraine are heavily subsidized, so that, as I understand it, they pay roughly $4,800 US a year to do medicine in Ukraine, versus, here at home
about
it's over 4 million if you're not one of the heavily subsidized students. But for many students who pay the full cost sharing arrangements, over 4 million. So that is over 4 times more, more like 5 or 6 times more. So, I'm hoping that something will be worked out for them to enable them to continue. Good. And of course, I'm willing and will play whatever role I can in assisting them.
There's traditionally a strong relationship with the People's National Party and the Republic of Cuba. I know it's early days, you say nothing have basically been concrete and work out, but as a party, as I say, you have an established relationship, a long-standing relationship with Cuba. Would you be prepared to basically, explore those options once the students are willing to basically study in that country?
We've already started that process from about a week ago. I asked one of our officers who has a good relationship with the Cuban government and had studied there and so on, to reach out to her contacts there, which she has done. So that is where we're investigating that. And as soon as we hear from them and get something, we would pass that on to the government here so they can complete the negotiation.
The process.
It's not our intention to be anything other than facilitators and to assist the students. We don't want to in any way try to play politics with it or to do anything which might confuse or muddy the waters. We want us to be as helpful as we can.
It's very encouraging, Mr. Golden, to hear you say that, because certainly, and I think that's where you're getting a lot of kudos, because people recognize that although you have inserted yourself to help as best as you can, you're recognizing that we have a government in Jamaica. So you are basically, assisting by putting them into get the information and forward it to the government. And I think that's where you're scoring very, very, very heavily, sir.
Well, we had this idea of putting together a fund to support the students in terms of their leaving. This is at the time when they were still in Ukraine. And we set a target of 10,000 US and we raised that money. And I contacted the Prime Minister on the Friday. I spoke to him at 1:00 just to tell him that we had raised this money and we wanted it to go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, just to ensure that the efforts to support them were seamless and we weren't crossing wires or mudding the waters. And he said to me, great, and he would like to match that. And so I said, wonderful. And I got the details of the ministry's bank account after 4 o'clock that afternoon. Minister of State, Leslie Campbell, sent me those details sometime after 4. And over the weekend, we did the transfer. The money would have reached the ministry's account on the Monday, Jamaican equivalent, because they don't have a U.S. account. They have a J dollar account. So that's what happened. And I believe that the government or the JLP or whoever it was also, I think he went a little higher than we had.
Yes.
So that's what he announced, which is fine. And so that money was made available. And this is the kind of cooperation that we need in a crisis. It's not a time for us to pull each other down.
Yes.
It's a time for us to help lift each other up. And that's what I was just pleased
Yes.
that we were in a position to be proactive. And we also, arranged some psychiatric support for them, and I want to thank Dr. Winston Delahaye, who is former chief medical officer. He put together a group, I think, of 6 psychiatrists.
And of course, Deputy Dean here at UA.
Yes, and he's Deputy Dean at UA, that's right. And, so that the contact details were made available to the students. And of course, it's up to them if they want to utilize those services. But I believe many of them need that kind of help. And having spoken to some of their parents, because quite a few of them, their parents have contacted me, and, and their parents have expressed their concern for the trauma that the children have gone through, and they're not children, they're adults now, students have gone through. And so I believe that this is an important service that they should avail themselves of. So, it's been a really trying time for them. And, I think it's good that they can see that the leaders of the country are showing some care and trying to put things in place promptly for them. But the education issue is the biggest concern right now, and I'm just hoping that something can be done for that.
Good. Mr. Golden, I'm going to take you over the 10:30 because I have some other questions I want to put to you. But just as one of our popular DJ, some vintage, Admiral Bailey had a song that said, boy, you think me did done, me just a come. Because when we believe that you're running out of steam, you basically reach out to the principal of the school at oh my goodness, that high school there in St. Catherine, Guysville High School. And basically, you did not take the opportunity to just take a gift package in a bag of food or so, but you went to the heart of the situation and you would have worked out with case that the young man has all intention to attend, and you basically tied down the arrangement there. Mr. Golden, you go hard, man.
Well, I don't know if you saw that video that went viral with the young man, and he just describing his life and his aspirations. But it was a fantastic video, and it was very moving. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, gosh, we have to find a way to help this youngster. And the truth is that there are many, many youngsters in Jamaica who have faced similar challenges. But, when a particular individual comes to your attention, it tears at the heart, and you try and do what you can. So I got the number for his principal and spoke to him and indicated my willingness to assist. And my assistant contacted Case and spoke to the authorities there. And they explained that there were other persons involved who were trying to help and so on. And so, I just made some resources available, which I believe will help him with his living expenses while he's a Case student, because I'm sure he's going to attend Case, life spare, as we say. I think that is now a certainty. And, but he will have other needs. And so we will be helping with that. And in fact, possibly some other students in a similar situation will also benefit from that assistance. And I've also...
Mr. Golden, please, just hold for me. I have to go to our time signal. Please hold. Indeed, welcome back. It's 10:32. Going up to 10:33. We have Mr. Mark Golden online with us in a riveting interview here with yours truly, Conrad O'Brien, of course, and Straight Up News Talk 93 FM. And just want to remind you that we're coming to you live from the studios here at News Talk at UWI Mona in the parish of St. Andrew, Jamaica. We are taking the time out to go through these things because it is important for us to chronicle things, as to how they unfold and so on, and to remove the hard politics from it. Indeed, the Jamaican people at the end of the day will decide how they reward the PNP, because you can't separate the PNP from its leader. So that will happen. But what we're interested in is basically getting the information out there and how things unfold. And certainly Mr. Golden has been doing that very, very well for us to have some appreciate and have some better understanding as to all that I would have, taken place as it relates to the student in the Ukraine, and now we're back home with the young man at Geisel High School. Very brilliant young man, and need a kind of help. And indeed, Mr. Golden reach out in a very special way. Welcome back, sir. Thanks for holding.
Thank you very much, Conrad. I should mention, since it being International Women's Day, that we also I have a friend who's a consultant orthopedic specialist, and I reached out to him on behalf of the young man's mother, because the video had expressed that she had a problem with her foot,
Yes.
And, I'm happy to say that she will be seeing him, I think, next week for a consultation, and hopefully, she will get the care that she needs so that the problem she has with her foot will be sorted out. So I'm just happy to have been able to do that, because I think it's very difficult when you have a medical condition and you're unable to get the appropriate treatment. Because although we have so-called free healthcare in Jamaica, we all know that the reality is that it is not accessible, because many of the costs that go with it are very, very high, and people struggle with those. So just giving thanks for the opportunity to assist, in any way we can.
Good. There's a saying here in Jamaica, Mr. Golden. I know you're a man who have your ears to the ground and you have your rutical background and so on, contrary to what some people would think. So there's a saying that goes like this, that chip no fly far from block. So we all know, your father's pedigree as it relates to him assisting and helping, the center here that is named after him, the Sir John Golden Rehab Center,
Yes.
So,
yes.
But from time to time, people will differ. It doesn't necessarily mean that you follow in the same footstep of your parents. So you, in your own right, Mr. Golden, how difficult it is for you to do these things? Or these are traits that you would have basically inherited from your late parents?
Well, I was brought up, in a household. My father was I think, Jamaica's first orthopedic surgeon. And he got very involved in helping persons with disabilities. He started what was then called the polio center initially out of the polio outbreak in the 50s. And then it became a general rehab center called Mona Rehabilitation Center. And ultimately, after he died in 1996, the government named it after him. So it's now called the Sir John Golden Rehab Center. And, he was a man who was very philanthropic in his outlook. He wasn't motivated by financial reward. He was really motivated by a sense of obligation and duty to people who needed his help. And so that was very much the culture that I grew up in my family. My mother, she was a career public servant. She worked at what was then called the Central Planning Unit. She was a cadet in the 50s, and then in the 60s, when she got married to my father, she moved to the rehab center and spent the rest of her career really helping him manage that. So that is the kind of background I come out of, and I grew up around persons with disabilities. I have many long-standing friends, Sarah Newland Martin and many others. The sports persons who represented Jamaica so successfully over the years in the Paralympics and other games, persons with disabilities. So I come out of that background. I was very involved in working with Senator Floyd Morris to get the disabilities legislation brought to Parliament and passed. That was 6 years ago, and finally the government has managed to bring it into effect now. And so we're very happy to see that, because of the persons with disabilities are an important constituency in the country, and they're often forgotten or excluded from access to all sorts of things. And this legislation is going to give them rights that they can seek to enforce. And it's going to be a new day for employers and others. They have to now make some adjustments to accommodate the persons with disabilities and ensuring that they have reasonable and access to whatever opportunities are available. So, this is the kind of work that I've kind of inherited that mantle from my parents, and that's the outlook I've had, and that's really how I approach the politics as well. I find it important to try and do what I can to help individuals, as well as seeking to identify systemic solutions, because at the end of the day, no one person can help everybody.
Good.
You know, and the needs are great. But, you know, if we can identify the systemic issues, and I mean, I was talking to my friend Senator Damien Crawford, you know, and about the need to identify in a specific way, you know, what the issues are that people encounter on a daily life, and how the state can play a role in improving on those, and you know, and being creative around the solutions.
Good. Mr. Golden, you know, as a media man, when you get a punchline, you really have to sink your teeth in it and really get going. You mentioned Damien Crawford. You refer to him as your friend, Senator Damien Crawford. And, you know, he's one of those persons within your party that, of course, have some level of love and popularity out there, you know. But in recent time, you know, people believe that there was a kind of stalemate there. How is that going? And by virtue of what you're saying, could we see Damien Crawford being installed in a seat in Jamaica in the not too distant future by you, as you move to fill out these constituency and get yourself ready for whenever the Prime Minister decides to go to the poll?
Well, you know, Damien and I we've been good, I would say, colleagues, and I would say friends for many years now, you know, and I have always admired his talents, because he is a very talented person. He's a creative thinker. He's a great communicator. And so, you know, I welcome him as part of our overall team, because I think he does bring an important set of skills and to the table. So I know that, you know, internally we've had our issues through the various challenges for leadership over the years. And we're slowly and surely trying to resolve those. And, you know, everybody who's willing to serve the party and the movement in the interest of the people of Jamaica, you know, will come on board, because they are welcome. And certainly I would count Damien among those, you know, and he and I have an ongoing dialogue. And, you know, I look forward to seeing him move from strength to strength as he pursues his political career. He has a great future ahead of him, and I hope to be part of that.
So in terms of, I know that ultimately it's a person's decision, but based on the discourse that you have been having and so on, you envisage that you're seeing Damien Crawford being on the slate of candidate for the People's National Party at the next election, whenever that is called?
That's a possibility. I don't want to say yay or nay to that, because a lot of that will depend on what Damien's what his ambitions are at a particular point in time. You know, he has been focused on building a good business, and he has, you know, he's in the agricultural field, he's in the egg and goat rearing and so on. And I know he has really immersed himself in that, which I fully understand, because it is important, I think, for persons who are in politics to have some kind of base, personal financial base for themselves that they have developed, so that they are, you know, because you can't go into politics to make money. That is not the purpose for which you should be going into politics, because politics is about service and it's about sacrifice. So, you know, I can't tell you offhand now what Damien's timing is. He and I are slated to have a discussion around some of these issues, which we haven't yet had, but we will have soon.
Good.
But at this point in time, all I would say is that whatever he wants to do, and whatever role he wants to play, he's very welcome, and I would endorse it, I would want it, because, as I've said, he's somebody I get along well with, and we share ideas constantly via WhatsApp or the phone. And, you know, I have a significant, I have a high regard for him and his ability, and I believe that it's a mutual respect, so I don't see any problem with that.
Good. And from your vantage point, indeed, you will do whatever you can to woo him in that direction.
I certainly will. Certainly will. And not just him. All of the talent in the party. You know, we want to leverage.
Good. I want to close out with you with some of the issues to come in the Parliament this afternoon, the expectation. But before I go there, since we enter into some party thing now as it relates to candidates, let's just deal with some of those. For example, you have the party had lost quite a number of seats that traditionally supports the PNP. A number of them, I get a call here, and radio. A lot of people communicate with me in WhatsApp group and so on and so forth. And basically almost treating me, Mr. Golden, as somebody who have that kind of direct line to you. Believe that, listen, Conrad, you can say this, and the party leader will listen and so on. I tell them not quite so. However, I know you're a man who listens. So let's look at some of the seats now. For example, South Manchester, those down there in Westmoreland and so on. How is that going? Are you actively looking at people to put in those seats now? And, what's your timeline on that?
Yeah, so we had been focused in 2021, from 2020 going into 2021, we were focused on the preparation for the local government elections, and we put a lot of effort around trying to get our organization in place for that. Of course, now the government, for whatever reason, has decided to extend the date again for another year, the outside date. The election should have been held by February 2021, and they extended it to February 2022, which was last month. And again, last month, they've extended it for another year up to February 2023. Now, as we go, of course, that's going further and further into the cycle of this government. So we are now, obviously, we remain focused on the local government preparations, but we're also looking at the identifying persons who can go into constituencies from a leadership perspective and play a role, even if they're not going in as necessarily candidates at this point, but they can go in as showing leadership for the constituency organization and building the party's organization in the constituency with a view to perhaps becoming the candidates when that time comes. So that is something we're actively working on, yes. Good. So all and you're looking at all the seats that are, especially those that would have been, because what I'm getting, Mr. Golden, is some of these seats that traditionally support the PNP, because the leadership is not really there underground. It could be disadvantageous to you, because they have a sitting member of parliament and so on. So people are saying that they believe that the party and you as leader, along with your general secretary, should move post haste to get the organization fully up and running in those constituencies. Aren't you not concerned about that? No, I am. And I agree that really the time has come for that, and we should be focusing on that. And, that is something that we are looking at. We have there, in fact, there are a few seats now where we have persons who have shown an interest, and we're encouraging them to get involved, and there's some more that we need to do, and that's a work in progress. But I agree with that sentiment.
Good. This is the extended interview with the opposition leader. We're trying to get some things here, get all the information we can, because indeed your opposition party is always a government in waiting, and indeed for the Jamaican people to basically be served properly, you need a strong opposition. So we're gazing into the leader mind this morning. So just stick and stay with us right here at News Talk 93 FM with yours truly, Conrad O'Brien. You get this nowhere else. Your mid-morning number one fix. It's 10:46 as we continue with Mr. Mark Golden. Now, Mark, the seat in Kingston here that the former opposition leader occupied, Dr. Peter Phillips, we understand what is happening based on what we hear, we have heard through the media and whatever source so far as it relates to his health, and we wish him well, and we are easing our prayers. However, the conversation comes up from time to time as to whether or not he should demit the constituency as MP. What's your take on that? Where do you stand on that as it relates to Dr. Phillips go or remain?
Well, Dr. Phillips is an elder statesman of our party. Respect is due to him in every way and at every level. He remains a member of Parliament. I speak to him from time to time. I spoke to him up to a few days ago. He sounded great. His voice is strong. He sounded positive. So whatever issues he may have, he's working through those, and he has expressed, I think, publicly that he's not ready to give up being the member of Parliament yet. Mm-hmm. And I fully respect that. And
yes.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to see him continue to serve in that capacity until he's ready to move on from that. And in the meantime, he understands what needs to be done. We understand what needs to be done, and there's work going on in that constituency. We have somebody there who's a chairman now, Dennis Gordon. He's also the chairman of Region 3 for the party, very experienced councillor, the Maxfield Park Division, and he's doing the work to ensure that the organization is not neglected, and he's mentored and guided by Dr. Phillips in that regard. So, yes, I mean, it is a situation which I know that Dr. Phillips doesn't intend to run again in another election. That he made clear from long ago. But in terms of the timing for him to give up seat, and that is a matter which we have an understanding on that, and there's no fixed time date. There's no fixed date for that. And as long as he's happy to continue with being the member of parliament, we're happy with it as well, and we're fully supportive of him as he goes through whatever issues he's working through now.
Good. And the relationship between you and the former president of the party and opposition leader, Dr. Peter Phillips, what is the relationship like?
It's a good relationship. He and I have had meetings since I became party leader. We have good conversations. I think he appreciates those conversations, as do I. And, I learn a lot from him, and I benefit from his thoughts and his counsel. So, yeah, we have a good relationship. And most recently, we were at a funeral together about 3 weeks ago, and or maybe 4, I can't remember, for one of our former comrades, Castriota. And, we were there for a good amount of time before the actual service started. And we had a really interesting conversation around constitutional reform and other issues like that. And, as I said, I've spoken to him more recently over the phone and so on. So, yeah, we have a good relationship.
Good. And the same would be true for all the other persons in the party, because you seems to be an easygoing guy. What with Paul, well, all of those persons, you're basically good.
Yeah, man. I mean, Philip and I have met together twice in recent times to discuss how he sees things, how I see things, how we want to move forward. I think he's fully committed to the party, fully committed to trying to get back into government. And, I look forward to working with him as well. So, yes, I mean, there's no individual in the leadership of the party who I don't get along with on a personal level. No.
Absolutely. I'm moving a pace, Mr. Golden. In recent time, we have seen, well, she have always done it, but in recent time, we're seeing more and more of this, where Miss Lisa Hanna, she's doing some very interesting op-ed in the paper, and persons say, listen, it seems as if she's on a frolic of her own. The op-eds that she's writing, are those some of the policy position? God, that seems quite interesting. Are those some of the policy position that the PNP is looking at, and she basically seems to be one of those persons out there kind of pushing them?
Well, I think Lisa has been writing as Lisa Hanna in a personal capacity when she's writing those articles. They're interesting articles. She has some great ideas in them. And, I have no difficulty whatsoever. Not she. I think Philip is also writing some articles for the Gleaner. Anyway, we like our spokespersons and our representatives to be out there showing that they are, active, that they're thinking, that they have a lot to contribute. So, I have no difficulty whatsoever with that. I mean, her official position, other than as Member of Parliament of South East St. Anne, is that she's the opposition spokesperson for foreign affairs and foreign trade. And she and I collaborate on that quite a lot. And, we were in touch right through the issue when the students were in Ukraine with the possibility of war, breaking out. She and I were in dialogue. We issued 3 releases over that time, which she spearheaded. And, she shared her ideas with me. I shared my ideas with her on those, and those releases went out. And she and I are in constant dialogue around that, and in her official role in the party as foreign affairs and foreign trade spokesman. In terms of her articles I think it's to the Observer, those are really that's her thing. And, I have no difficulty with it. And I'm happy to see her putting her ideas out there. But I think those ideas really represent Lisa's personal opinions on a variety of issues, which are interesting and valuable.
Good. I see one of your constituents, Marie Wilson, she's offering some congratulations there on the coordination, what you did on Sunday. Was it Sunday? In basically recognize, what was it, the 25th year passing of Michael Manley?
Oh, yes. So thank you, Marie. Yeah, man. No, we had a lovely event organized by Region 3, which is Kingston and St. Andrew. This was something they came up, which was really just to commemorate and honor the memory of Michael Manley on the 25th anniversary of his passing. And we had it down at Heroes Park, and floral tributes were laid. A number of different of tributes were given by different leaders in the party and different aspects of the life and dimensions of Michael Manley, who was, of course, a multidimensional individual and a tremendous icon on the Jamaican scene and political scene and an international stage as well. So I think it was well received because it was another demonstration of the party, acting together as one united body. And we were all just so happy to be there to, again, have a gathering after, with the whole COVID situation where we've really been operating through cyberspace a lot with Zoom and all. A lot of our meetings have been virtual for us to actually be able to come together in a physical way and be there together. That was a wonderful event.
The last 5 minutes, Mr. Golden, as it relates to, we know that Dr. Nigel Clark will be on his feet in the House of Representatives this afternoon. You're on record saying that your choice for the minimum wage was $12,000. We have seen where the government put on $1,800 to be effective in April. And that is to say that it will be about $450 per year when you look at it, because it's about four years since that cohort have not gotten a dollar increase. What's your take on that? Are you satisfied with this as against the background where inflation is going through the roof?
No, I'm not satisfied with it. I think that was an inadequate increase given the way prices have moved since, I think, 2018 when it was set last time round. That's 4 years ago. And so the increase that was given will really not provide any buffer for future price increases going forward. And effectively, the persons who are earning at the bottom of the society, they are not going to have any protection from future inflation. And we know that inflation is going to be raging because of what's happening across the world, coming out of COVID with all the supply chain problems, the freight costs out of the Far East. Then you have all the commodity prices, which are under pressure because of the geopolitical uncertainties in the world with this war in Eastern Europe and so on. So we know that prices are going to be flying and are flying. And the minimum wage being set at $9,000, that is not going to be adequate to give those persons who are at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of earnings some protection from the price movements going forward. All that would have done is assisted to address the inflation which is accrued since 2018.
Good.
But that is not sufficient. We know, for example, in January, the inflation, the 12 months to January, was the prices had moved at 9.7%.
9.8.
But the truth is that is not really a realistic number. If you look at what has happened to food prices for basic items, it's much higher than that.
Richard Pandoe, sorry, leader. Richard Pandoe on this program said that the real inflation that those persons are facing could be upward of to 70%, 50 to 70%.
Yeah, well, there you go. And he's not wrong. I mean, chicken has been raised many times over the period of the pandemic. Oil prices have gone up significantly. We did an exercise looking how prices had moved from January 2021 through to February 2022. And the ex-refinery price was up some 60% for gasoline. So, that affects everything else across the board, including electricity prices and transportation costs.
And that, Mr. Golden, the price, the gasoline price, the price at the pump, everybody, including the opposition, the Retailers Association, the Manufacturers Association, calling, adding their voices in calling the government to look at the taxes at the pump, and gasoline, where the opposition stand on that. You believe that should be addressed in a frontal way this afternoon, and what direction do you expect the minister to go?
I don't know what direction he's going to go, because he's a staunch fiscal conservative. So his focus is on ensuring that the debt is reduced to 60% of GDP by March 2028, and he is fully committed to making sure that happens, and that means running a high primary surplus even in this crisis, and having a balanced budget even in this crisis when other countries are looking at it differently. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there are two elements to this gas issue. First of all, there's the hedge fund, the hedge fuel tax, which was put in place in 2015 for a specific purpose when it was considered prudent to protect consumers from future prices of oil going up. And we could buy insurance in the international market so that if the price of oil went above a certain price, then the increase above that would be paid for not by Jamaica, but by whoever we bought the insurance from. And that was what that tax was imposed for. $7 per litre was to pay for that insurance. The JLP came into office. They said they didn't accept that was a prudent thing to do. They abandoned those insurance arrangements, but they didn't abandon the tax. They've kept the tax in place. And to my mind, it's wrong when a tax is imposed for a specific
Some people
purpose.
are describing it as almost criminal, Mr. Golden.
I think it's quite wrong, because when you put in place a tax for a specific purpose, and it's a purpose for the public benefit, and you abandon that purpose, you should not keep the tax that was there to finance that purpose. And they were saying, well, look, the price didn't go above the required level, so we weren't able to call on the insurance. But that's the way insurance works.
Absolutely. As a trained advisor and somebody who spent a lot of time in the industry, I know exactly how it works. In a general sense, not speaking specifically to Edge. Finally, Mr. Golden, and this is coming through from one of my listeners here, Ricardo Goldburn. He's interested in about hearing something about the shadow cabinet. Are you looking at basically, tweaking it, and are you prepared to look at persons who are not in the Senate or in the lower house to be a part of the new shadow cabinet, if and when you decide to go that route?
Yeah, just say that those issues are under review. I think, we've had a little over a year since the shadow cabinet was comprised. We put it together, I think, December 2020, so we're now in March 2022, so that's like a year and a quarter. And yes, it is something I am looking at, and after the budget, I'm going to focus more on that. And, I'm keeping all my options open with that, because I think at the end of the day, we want to put the best team forward for the Jamaican people to see what the People's National Party has to offer. So that is really what it's about. And, I don't want to get too much into that, because those are discussions that we have to have internally and so on before we announce anything. But yes, it is something that we're looking at.
Good. Thanks a lot, Mr. Golden. Wow, this was really an extensive interview. We started at about 10 minutes after 10 o'clock, 10:15 thereabout. It's now a minute after 11 o'clock. And certainly we decided to spend the time because, we really want to put it out there so the Jamaican people can look at what they are, how the leader of the PNP thinking as the government in waiting. One of my callers said that you will be the 10th Prime Minister of Jamaica. We'll see how that goes, Mr. Golden. All the best.
Thank you very much for having me, Conrad. It's always a pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for giving me the time to share these ideas with you.
Thanks a lot. All right, so that's Mark Golden, Justice Golden, the man Marky G, the opposition leader and president of the People's National Party. Very extensive and interesting interview there. What say you? We'll take your calls when we return from the break.